Before I dive into the Captain Marvel story, I need to explain how I review a film story. I do it on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being I enjoyed 10% of this film story, and 10 being I enjoyed 100% of a film story. Now that that's out of the way, let's dive into Captain Marvel's story review. The film follows Carol Danvers, an Air Force pilot who becomes a member of the Kree elite force known as the Star Force. She goes on missions with the other operatives under her mentor, Jan Rog. She doesn't remember her past, but gets glimpses of life that she once lived back on Earth in her dreams. Years later, Carol Danvers fights against Skrulls with her team and ends up crash landing onto Earth in the 1990s. On Earth, with the help of Nick Fury, she begins to figure out her past and realize who she really is, one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The story's take on the Kree/Skrull war is an interesting one, and one that I did not see them going down. I thought that was the best portion of the overall film, when Carol Danvers was trying to figure out whose side is the right side, if there even is a right side, and what side does she fall on. The story worked for me 80% of the time. There are a few things that bother me, including the lack of a great character arc. Carol Danvers starts the movie strong and ends the movie strong. There isn't a moment where she learns her new abilities and fights between the positives and negatives of being a powerful being. We get glimpses of her past sprinkled throughout the film, but because of the way the film is structured, it affected my viewing. I couldn't get connected to Carol Danvers as a character because when we saw her past, I was just seeing it, not feeling it. I understand that Marvel Studios doesn't want to do a typical origin story anymore, but in this case, I wish they went more paint by numbers in terms of starting in the past and going towards the present instead of jumping back and forth between both. I get what they were trying to do, with her having no memory of her past but having past experiences showing up in her dreams. I just couldn't get connected or feel anything for Carol. The fact that she started out powerful and ends powerful also made it hard to care, because there was no threat to her. No thought crossed my mind of, oh, I wonder how she's going to get through this. I knew she was going to, easily. The film also had many things that are predictable. Some key story elements were not, and I enjoyed those in particular. I thought what they did with Carol and Nick Fury was great, but I do wish they did more with Coulson, mainly because I am such a big Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. Overall, there are some elements to the film that I didn't like, but mainly I enjoyed it. That is why I give the film a 7 out of 10, meaning I enjoyed 70% of it. Now on to how I review special effects. I also do it on a scale from 1 to 10, but in this case, it's if 1, 10% of it looked good, to 10, 100% of the CGI or practical effects or whatever is used looks fantastic. Now I'm back on to the Captain Marvel review. The special effects in the film looked really good. Of course, there is a lot of CGI, but I really enjoyed the practical effects used when it came to the Skrulls. I know there are a lot of critics out there who are on the opposite opinion, saying that they look like Power Ranger villains, and I can see where they are coming from, but it worked for me in the end. I always like to see practical effects used over CGI any day. There are some CGI elements that did not work for me, mainly something that happens with the cat Goose in the film. It just looked cheesy and took me out of it every time a certain thing happened. Overall, I thought 80% of the film's special effects worked. On to explaining how I review entertainment. 1 being I was entertained 10% of the time, 10 being I was entertained 100% of the time. Now back to the review. I was entertained a majority of the time watching the film. It took me a bit to get into it, as the first act is a bit messy, with jumping back and forth between present and past Carol Danvers. There were also some moments that dragged in the middle of the second act of the film, but overall I was entertained 80% of the time. Next category is length. Length is a combination of entertainment and story. Length is basically, did the story that it was trying to tell fit the time of the film overall? Was it too long? Was it too short? Stuff like that. And so in this case, so when it's a 1, that means that the story fit, and the length only worked at 10%. And that includes being entertained, because longer movies that don't need to be long can be boring. And in 10, it was a perfect length for the story that it was trying to tell. Now back to the review. Like I said, in entertainment, the movie begins to drag towards the second act, and I do feel that the length of this film could have been shortened by 10 to 15 minutes, and if it was, the story would be much tighter than it is now. There are some things in the film that needed to be longer, and then there are some things that needed to be shorter. I think that's the main problem with the film, is that there are things in its story that it passes by that I wish it took more time with, and then there are things that it took its time with that should have been passed by. That is why overall I give it a 7 out of 10. I thought the length fit the story that it was trying to tell about 70% of the time. When it comes to the acting category, I don't just look at the main actors. I look at everybody. Did everybody in that film give a good performance? So when it comes to 1, only 10% of all performances worked for me. And when it comes to the 10, 100% of the performance worked for me. I think it's only fair to look at every single performance equally in a film, because it's even the smallest people can make or break the film. Now on to the review. I thought that overall all of the cast really brought their A game to the film. I really liked Brie Larson as Carol Danvers. I will say that there are some criticisms about her not having much emotion in the film, but it didn't bother me because I understood where she was coming from, because she's playing a character that is a soldier. Soldiers are not meant to be emotional. They're meant to be cool under pressure, and B, a character that can't remember her past. So of course she's not going to be showing that much emotion other than maybe confused. She does laugh some portions of the movie, so it was nice to see her happy at some portions. Samuel L. Jackson was fantastic as Nick Fury again. Of course, he's always great as Nick Fury, but this time Nick Fury is quite different. He's actually a lot lighter, happier, bouncier. I mean, he really enjoys spending time with a cat. So if you don't think of Nick Fury from the Avengers movies and stuff, you wouldn't see him spending time with a cat and being happy with playing with a cat. But in this case, before he lost his eye, he was a lot happier of a Nick Fury. Jude Law was fantastic as Yon-Ra, but you already know Jude Law was going to be great because he's always fantastic. He always brings his A game, even to movies that aren't the best. Ben Mendelsohn as Talos was probably my favorite performance throughout the movie. He was absolutely fantastic. He stood out immensely from the other cast members. So funny, so fantastic. He just chewed up the scenery, had fun with his performance, you could tell. I mean, it was unbelievably awesome to see, because Ben Mendelsohn for the most part has been shoehorned as the villain character in films, including like Star Wars Rogue One and such like that. And in this case, to show that he has comedy chops and more to his acting, I was really, really happy with that. And overall, I thought he was awesome. And of course, another favorite of mine is Lashana Lynch, who played Maria Rambeau. Her performance was great, but the main part that I really loved the best is that her performance definitely elevated Brie Larson's performance when they were talking with each other, when they met each other in the movie. I thought that whole portion with her and Carol Danvers was fantastic, and some of the best chemistry throughout the film. And some of the best, finally, I could get connected emotionally moments throughout the movie was between Brie Larson and Lashana Lynch's character. Overall, I thought the acting was on point, and there was not really too many disappointments in terms of acting. So overall, I give it a 9 out of 10. The last category is Watch Again. In this case, it's all about, is this movie worth watching again? 1 being 10% worthy to watch again, and 10 being, I'm definitely going to watch this again, 100% worthy to watch this again. Now back to the review. Captain Marvel has some enjoyable moments for sure, has some boring moments for sure, There are some moments that are predictable. There are some moments that I was really, really happy with. The acting overall is great. I thought that, the special effects for the most part were really solid, except for a few things. And overall, I had a great time watching the film. I would definitely be watching this again. Not just to prepare for Endgame, but because it's a solid Marvel movie and it's a good time. It's not the best Marvel movie. It's not the worst by far. So overall, I give Captain Marvel an 8 out of 10 for watch again. Time to break down the scores and add them all together and see what letter grade Captain Marvel gets.